Good morning, class 9 students. I welcome you all on this online platform provided by Jagrati Classes. Today we'll be continuing our chapter 5, that is Fundamental Unit of Life. So this video lecture is for class 9th. And we were doing chapter 5, that is Fundamental Unit of Life. Now we'll continue our chapter. In the previous video lecture, I told you a brief idea about plasmolysis. So we'll be dealing again with what do you understand by the concept of plasmolysis, and then today we'll see nucleus. Nucleus is a very important part of the cell. It is actually known as the brain of the cell also, okay? So we'll be first doing plasmolysis. Remember, these short topics can come as short questions in the examinations. That is, one topic which we previously did was endocytosis. So what was endocytosis? Can you recall the phenomenon of endocytosis? Okay, the students who knew it, great. And who don't know, please refer to the previous video. I want to request you that please, whenever you see a video, try to make the notes, okay? Make some rough notes from that video and then go through the notes before viewing the next class. So this is my polite and humble request to all my students. Now, endocytosis, which I was telling you, it is the phenomena by which unicellular organisms like amoeba engulf their food. Endocytosis refers to the process whenever the flexible plasma membrane is used for engulfing food, okay? So this means endocytosis. Cytosis is your food particle and endo means taking in that food particle. Now we'll be dealing with the topic plasmolysis. I have already discussed this topic, but some brief idea I'll also provide in this lecture too. What do you mean by plasmolysis? So firstly, writing the exact definition of plasmolysis, we have plasmolysis. It refers to the process. It refers to the process in which the protoplasmic content shrinks up. Okay, so this is what you have your process plasmolysis. Plasmolysis refers to the process in which the protoplasmic contents get shrinked up. So this is plasmolysis, and I already discussed what do you mean by the term protoplasm here. This is nothing new, we have already done this. What is protoplasm? Protoplasm stands for, when you combinedly speak about the nucleus and cytoplasmic content, then you call them protoplasm. So protoplasm is nucleus plus your cytoplasm content. Okay? So nucleus and cytoplasm can be combinedly referred to as protoplasm. Now, if I make a diagrammatic representation, okay, before that, we said that in plasmolysis, protoplasm or the cell content, the inside content of the cell would shrink up. So when do we observe this shrinking phenomenon? Either I should place my cell in an hypotonic solution or I should put my cell into the hypertonic. We discuss these solutions. If you are not able to answer me, please refer to the back classes, okay? So I want my cell contents to shrink up. That means I want my cell to lose all the fluid content which it contains, okay? I am repeating that. For shrinking up, that is, if I want the cell contents means everything which is present in my cell, that is the cytoplasm, nucleus, everything. If I need them to shrink, that is if I need the cell to shrink we can also refer to as the decrease or reduction observed in volume. So it can be called volume decrement or reduction in the volume, because cell shrinkage is related to reduction in your cell volume or cell shape. So if I want my cell contents to shrink, then what phenomena actually I want? I want my cell to lose all the water, all the solvent which it contains. So I want loss of water from the cell. And in turn, because I require to lose all the solvent or my water content present inside the cell, that is, can you remember the diagram or this diagrammatic representation from your previous class, that which type of solution actually should I take here if I want all the water content of the cell to be moved out? That is, if I want the direction of water to be towards the given solution and against the cell, then what kind of solution should I take here? You have two options to answer. Either you will take a hypertonic solution or you will require a hypotonic solution. Hypertonic means a concentrated solution you have to take, and hypotonic refers that you want a dilute kind of solution. And concentrate, dilute, what these terms symbolize? Concentrate solution refers that when you have less amount of water and more amount of your solute. Solute, as we discussed earlier, you can take anything, that is your sugar or salt, okay? So if you have less amount of water compared to the amount of solute, you call the solution to be concentrated. For example, if I am given two situations, if I take two containers and fill them with 100 ml water both, okay, I am making the solvent equally, I am distributing it, that is 100 ml water or 100 ml solvent is present in the two beakers called A and B. I take 100 ml water here and the next 100 ml to be in the container B. Now I am adding 2 teaspoons of my sugar in the first beaker, whereas in the second I am adding 100 teaspoons of sugar. Yes, this would be an extra sweet solution for you. But for understanding the concept, I am giving you a daily life example. Can you now tell me which would act as a hypertonic solution and which would be your hypotonic solution? Or in simple general terms, which would be more concentrated, A or B? Great. We know that A would be dilute and B would be concentrated, because the term concentrated refers that when you have less amount of water, or you can say more amount of solute. So because here in the two cases we have less amount of solute in first compared to more amount or high amount of solute in your beaker B. So beaker B would contain a concentrated solution, or I can say now specifically that it contains a hypertonic solution, and here what we have as A is your hypotonic. Okay, so this, what do you understand by the terms hypertonic and hypotonic, or you can say by the terms concentrate and dilute. So what will be the case, which type of solution should I take that the movement of water is from the cell to the given solution or to the container water? Correct. The solution which I will require would be a hypertonic solution, because if you have a container which is filled up with a hypertonic solution, and then next you place a cell in this container, okay, this is your cell. Hypertonic means the amount of water here is less as compared to the amount of water present in your cell. That is, amount of water is quite high inside the cell compared to the amount of water present outside. We are just taking or discussing this in the terms of water or solvent, because we know we have to study the concept of osmosis. And osmosis is what? Movement of water molecules or movement of solvent molecules from its higher concentration to the lower concentration. So because solvent will move, that is our water here will move, so we are considering water only, no need to consider the amount of solutes. So because we said that in osmosis we should have a semi-permeable membrane, So the plasma membrane of this cell would behave as semi-permeable. The next what we have is these water molecules, because they have a higher concentration inside the cell. I am talking about the concentration of water. I am not saying you the overall concentration of the solution. Because if I am telling you, don't get confused please, I am saying that concentration of water is higher inside the cell compared to the concentration of water which is present outside the cell, that is which is present in our container or beaker. So here I am referring to the concentration of water, and earlier I told you that hypertonic solution can be said as a concentrated solution. So please do not get confused between both these terms, that once I am saying hypertonic means concentrated solution, and at the next time or at the next moment I am telling you that concentration of water is more inside the cell. The difference here is that hypertonic solution contains less water, so it would therefore be a concentrated solution. But here I am talking about the concentration of what? The concentration of water or your solvent here. So concentration of water, or let me write to avoid any confusion, amount of water. Okay? I hope now this term is clear. You only use concentration for these hypertonic and hypotonic. And I am now referring that amount of water is where in the cell the amount of water is quite high as compared to the amount of water present outside the cell. So now as per the situation we know that in osmosis we have movement of water. Okay, only our solvent molecule moves, and movement of water is from high to low. I am just writing amount now, not concentration. Okay, or else you will get confused. That is amount of water, wherever water is present in higher amount, that water will shift where water is present to in lower quantity or lower amount. So because we have higher amount of water inside the cell compared to the outside environment, then this water will move outside, that is to the container. And because this cell is losing the fluid or losing the water, then what I would observe is this cell will get shrinked up. And we know, okay, now we are describing the process of plasmolysis, so I'll only be drawing the cell. Plasmolysis, as I told you in the previous class, remember that plasmolysis starts from the term P, and plasmolysis is seen only in plant cell. Okay, so both plasmolysis and plant start with the letter P. Now this is my cell, and this I have put my cell in our hypertonic solution. So this is the cell wall, and the next what I have inside the cell wall in the plant cell, this which cell I have taken? A plant cell. And this inner layer, the first one is your cell wall, that is the outermost covering, and this next one would be the cell membrane, or what you call a plasma membrane. Now because I have put this plant cell in a hypertonic solution, then it would lose all the water content present inside it. You know that cell wall is rigid. We already discussed the structural features of cell wall, whereas this cell membrane is flexible. So what would be observed is that this rigid cell wall is like a iron, okay, is like iron metal. So it would not undergo contraction, or it would also not undergo expansion in any case. So because of this rigid nature of cell wall does not undergo any kind of contraction, that is shrinkage in size, or expansion, that is enlargement of size. And now we'll talk about this cell membrane. Cell membrane being flexible, you know it would bend or it would contract and expand very easily. So when I put my cell in a hypertonic solution, what I would observe is that cell wall would retain its shape, that is it would remain as original, as it was previously present. But this cell membrane, because this cell is losing water out. So this cell membrane would shrink in size and it would appear somewhat to be this. That is, the gap present between your cell wall and cell membrane, which was only a small sized gap, would now therefore increase. This gap is increasing. This arrow I am only denoting for the gaps. Now again, when this cell will lose water further, then what would be observed is that this cell membrane would shrink more, okay? It would get shortened in size to a higher amount. And next is what a fully plasmolysed cell looks like. The cell wall is rigid, so it would maintain its shape, but this cell membrane along with the cell content, that is, I am referring here protoplasm. Protoplasm is this cell membrane including all the cytoplasmic matter in it. It would get shrinked and it would get shrink to a pea-sized size. That is, now it is completely dried up. It has lost all its water content, and in turn this situation would be observed. This is your protoplasm, that is all your cytoplasm, nuclear material, and your plasma membrane has got shrink and it has been converted into a pea-sized amount, okay? So this would be the picture of a completely plasmolysed cell. That is, the cell wall is in turn rigid and maintains its shape, but all the protoplasmic matter gets contracted or constricted in a particular region of this cell. So this is what a brief or a detailed account for your plasmolysis topic. So this was a topic which I really need to discuss. Now we'll discuss the next topic. In our previous class, we ended our class with plasmolysis. So I told you a detailed account about plasmolysis. And now in our earlier class, we did the structural properties and other features of plasma membrane. Then we discussed some solutions that were hypotonic, hypertonic, and isotonic. Then we discussed features of cell wall. And now what I'm starting with is nucleus. So as I told you earlier in the starting of this class that nucleus is of immense importance. Okay, nucleus, you can refer it to be the controlling unit of cell. Okay, or you can also call the nucleus to be the brain of the cell. Now we'll discuss why I am emphasizing nucleus so much, okay? What do you mean by nucleus and what are the functions or structural properties of nucleus? So before starting this topic, I'll give you an idea how do you prepare a temporary mount of any specimen. Temporary mount means how do you prepare the slide of any specimen. So let's suppose you want a glass slide. Because I know many of you would not be familiar with your practicals or you'll not have a good hand in practical. So let's start. What do you want? Our aim is to prepare a temporary mount of the given specimen. And let's suppose the given specimen here is onion peel. What do you mean by onion peel? That is, you take an onion, remove all the peels or its covering, I'm saying, okay, remove all the coverings. Then the peeled onion which you get, you just scrap off a thin film from this onion. So you will observe a tiny or a very fine, thin, white, transparent film coming out of the onion. So this is what we mean by onion peel here. Onion peel is not the peel of the onion, okay, chilka, wo nahi hai. Here the peel is once you peel off your onion, okay, clean it, then you scrap off from its boundary, you will observe a very fine transparent film which would come out of the onion. So you require this onion peel. What you do is you take your glass slide and you just keep your onion peel here. Let's suppose this is my onion peel. This is very delicate and fine, so handle with care. Now next you do what is, you put some stain on this onion peel. That is, this was your onion peel. Stain means a dye or something which would get this onion peel to get colored. So this I put 2 to 3 drops of my stain. So this process refers to staining. Sorry. So stains, for staining you can use different stains, and the examples of certain stains are, you can take safranin, okay, or in the labs many stains are available like methylene blue, safranin, etc. So you may take any stain and you put 2 to 3 drops of this stain on your slide, that is on your onion peel. Now the next step what we have here is, you put a cover slip on this matter. This was your colored or stained onion peel, and now you are putting a cover slip. Cover slip is again a fine glass piece, a square or rectangular in shape. So what is the purpose to keep this cover slip? Just because, let's suppose you are taking a glass slide, you are putting your material, and whenever you will walk towards the microscope, your material may fly away or it would drop off. So to prevent this, you put a cover slip, and this cover slip suppresses your material, that is, it keeps your material at the given particular place, okay. So this, what we put here is a cover slip. Now when I have prepared the temporary mount, okay, because it is temporary in nature. Now what further next do we have is, you observe this in a microscope. And whenever you observe this in a microscope, what kind of structures you would see? You would see that you have different compartments or cells, which we can refer to now. You will see this type of structure. That is, you see many compartments, many small compartments, which are referred to as cell. Let's suppose this is our one cell, which is of onion peel. And this cell, as you can see, contains a black dotted structure in approximately center or middle part of the cell. So this black dot is actually your nucleus. So you can see that this nucleus is of very small size or diameter compared to the size of your cell. But being such smaller in size also, it is called the controlling unit or brain of the cell, because this nucleus is responsible for the entire working mechanism of cell. So now let's discuss, what do you mean by nucleus? I already told you that nucleus is the brain of the cell, or nucleus is the controlling unit of the cell. Now nucleus, it was discovered by, this also we have done while we were discussing the history of cells. But let's write it down. It was discovered by Robert Brown in 1831, I guess. You can check the year once, okay? So it was discovered by Robert Brown in 1831. Then the next point here, what we have is, nucleus is called the brain or controlling unit of the cell. It is called the brain or the controlling unit. Then the next is what? It is a double membrane bound structure. That is, nucleus contains a double membrane. Okay, please do remember all the organelles which we are discussing and which we will discuss further. Some would contain no membrane at all. The others might have a single covering, that is a single membrane, and some might have a double membrane bound structure. So here, referring to nucleus, it is a double membrane bound structure. Okay, and it contains certain gaps or holes in its membrane. So we call it, it is covered by a porous membrane, or you can write, it has a porous it is a porous membranous structure. So it is covered by a porous membrane. And this nucleus contains what? Why you are giving so much importance to this nucleus? Now you will get to know this fact, that why nucleus is very important. So, nucleus contains a network of intertwined, thread-like structures which are referred to as the chromatin network. I'll explain it diagrammatically once I write all the points. Then the sixth point is, at the time of division, this chromatin network, which was an entangled thread-like network of structures, at the time of cell division, okay, division means at the time of cell division, this chromatin network, which was in a form of network of intertwined threads, this gets converted into rod-like structures which are called chromosomes. So at the time of cell division, chromatin material gets condensed, or it condenses to form rod-like structures which are called as chromosomes. Okay? So here what we have is, it contains, that is, now let's make a diagram, a rough diagrammatic sketch of nucleus. That is, you have your nucleus. So write down the first point, you can include that it is called the brain or controlling unit. It is approximately or generally spherical in shape. This nucleus is usually spherical in shape, okay? Then you can also include that it is usually present in the center of the cell. It is usually present in the center of any cell. So, okay, these are all the points of importance. You can find many other points. So, this is what we have, a nucleus here. Let's draw a perfect sphere. Let's try once more to draw a perfect sphere. Okay, let's suppose I have a sphere here, and now I'll draw another circle. Because you know nucleus is a double membrane bound organelle, so this is what you have, the double membranous structure with you. So this is what nucleus looks like. It is roughly spherical. So yes, this my hand drawn circle would work because it is not exactly spherical in shape always. Then you have what it is present in the center of the cell, and it is a double membrane bound structure. So I have made two coverings or two membranes here. Then you have that the membrane is porous. So for showing porous membrane, what I do is, I'll make certain holes in the membrane. That is, this membrane is somewhat like this. So the gaps which I have created in between the membrane denotes its porous structure. That is, it shows the porous structure of membrane. This is the pores. These are the pores present in your membrane. We can highlight the pores by next color, that is our red color, or you can use any color you like. So these are the pores present in your nuclear membrane. Now next, what is that? It contains chromatin network. That is, before division at the normal stage, an intertwined network of threads is present in your nucleus, which is known as chromatin network. So this is your chromatin network. But at the time of division, this chromatin material gets condensed, or it changes into rod-like structure. So this chromatin material at the time of division would change into rod-like structures, and these rod-like structure would be called as chromosomes. And these chromosomes contain what? Now the question arises, why chromosome is of immense importance then? Then this chromosome contains DNA, that is your nucleic material, deoxyribonucleic acid. And in some organism, primitive organism, viruses, it may also contain RNA in place of DNA. So this is a rod-like structure. It contains, this is called your chromosomes. Chromosome contain DNA or RNA, and these DNA, RNA, that is your genetic material or nucleic acids, these are responsible for inheritance of traits from the parents to your offsprings. That is, we have chromosomes in our cell, in our nucleus. These chromosomes contain genetic material, and this genetic material can be different in different organisms. That is, it could be DNA or it could be RNA. DNA is called deoxyribose nucleic acid, and RNA is called ribonucleic acid. Then this genetic material, that is DNA, it is in the form of helix. Double helix structure is of DNA. Now it contains, this DNA contains certain structure on the helix, and these are called as genes. And these genes, you have, every single gene is directing a particular trait. That is, you have one gene for your height, then you have another gene for your skin color, then another gene which is required for your shape of eyes, then you have many genes which decide the color of your eyes, then you have many, these all physical traits are governed by the genes. So you have these genes to be located on the DNA, and these genes are called the functional unit of inheritance. Okay, so these are called the functional unit of inheritance. That is, these genes are having the responsibility that the child of human would resemble to a human and not to a cat. Okay, that is, these genes are responsible that a cat will give birth to the offspring which would resemble to the kitten. Okay, and a human, it would give rise to an offspring which would resemble to a human baby. So, if any alteration or mutations or any error occurs in these genes, then what you observe? You observe certain abnormality. Okay, and many abnormalities we have seen in our day-to-day life. So these are chromosomes. Chromosomes contain DNA or RNA, and these contains genes. And these genes are responsible for inheritance of all the characters from parents to offsprings. So this is what you should know about nucleus. Nucleus was a double membrane bound structure. It contained a double membrane. Then it was a porous membrane. Why we have pores? Because for the entry and exit of certain materials. What is the function of these pores? So you can write the movement of material, the movement of different substances in and out of the nucleus, in and out of the nucleus occurs through these pores. Okay? Occurs through these pores. That is, this is your nucleus and it is present inside your cell. Okay? This is an enlarged view, so do not get confused. The nucleus is very small compared to the total volume of the cell. Then here outside the nucleus you have your fluid, that is your cytoplasm, which we'll be discussing now. So these pores allow some materials to get into the cytoplasm, and in turn these allows the material from the cytoplasm to enter into the nucleus through the pores. So this was an account of nucleus. I hope you have understood this, that what do you mean by nucleus, what is the function of nucleus, and why nucleus is of immense importance. Then we have two types of cells which are given in your books according to the type of nuclear organization. So based on the type of nuclear organization, you have two types of cells with you. That is, one is called a prokaryotic cell or prokaryotic organisms, and the next one would be eukaryotic organism. So the first differentiating point between prokaryotic organism and eukaryotic organism, that is, in Greek, pro means primitive, or you can say a less developed organism. And here the term eu refers to a well-developed or advanced organism. So eu is advanced or a well-developed organism. Next you have what? Prokaryotes are primitive. Why they are considered to be primitive? Because in them nucleus is not well defined. The structure of nucleus is not present properly, or in prokaryotic organisms we do not have a nuclear membrane surrounding your chromatin network. While in eukaryotes, the next point would be that they possess a well-defined nucleus in their cells. That is, a well-defined nucleus is present. Then the next is, if it is not well-defined, then which structural feature is lacking? So, nuclear membrane is absent in prokaryotes, whereas they have nuclear membrane, okay? They possess the perfect nuclear membrane, that is the double membranous structure. The next here is that they also do not contain membrane-bound organelles, that is, nucleus does not have a membrane in them, but the other organelles, the other cellular structures which are present, they also do not contain any membrane. So, they have non-membrane bound cell organelles. Non-membranous you can write, or you can also refer as non-membrane bound cellular structures or cell organelles, whereas they definitely have membrane bound organs. They have membrane bound organelles with them. So this is the basic difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, that is, prokaryotes are primitive, they do not have membranous structure around their nucleus, and in turn they do not have membrane around other organelles also. While talking about eukaryotes, they possess membrane also around the nucleus and around your other organelles also. Then the next point, you can also write more points, that is, in prokaryotic cells you have a single chromosome, whereas in prokaryotes they have a single presence of a single chromosome. While in eukaryotes, you have many chromosomes, okay? Then the next point is, the size of prokaryotic cell or prokaryotic nucleus is quite small, that is, it is 1 micrometers, but in case of eukaryotes, the size is quite big, that is, it is 5 to 100 micrometers. So the size of prokaryotes, nuclear size is 1 micrometer. And you know 1 micrometer is 10 raised to the power 6 meters, but in case of eukaryotic organism, the size can range from 5 micrometers to 100 micrometers. So this was a detailed account of prokaryotic organism and eukaryotic organism. Examples of prokaryotes can be your bacterias, and one term, that is, you are first writing the example of eukaryotes. Examples of eukaryotes, all the developed advanced animals and plants you see around you, that is, humans are definitely eukaryotes, Then you have developed plants. Okay, so you can also write name of specific examples here. Okay, there is one term which comes, and this would be the last term of our discussion of today's class. That is nucleoid. What do you mean by the term nucleoid? Nucleoid refers to the state where chromatin network which is present inside the nucleus, okay, the network of threads. So nucleoid refers to the state where chromatin network is not bounded with a nuclear membrane. So chromatin network or nuclear material lacking the membranous structure around it is referred as nucleoid. So wherever the point we have written that nucleus is not well defined, you can include and it is called as nucleoid. Nucleoid means you do not have the nuclear membrane, that is nuclear membrane is absent, but you have chromatin material, because I have written this has a single chromosome at least. So this nucleus where nuclear membrane is absent, but you have a chromatin material, we call this nucleus to be nucleoid. So this was enough for today's class, I guess. So we have discussed much about nucleus, and this is, again I am repeating, it is of immense importance for your examination point of view, and nucleus is in turn important for the cell itself also. So now in the next class we will be starting with cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a very brief account I will give you about cytoplasm, okay. Then we will see different cell organelles. So that would be endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complexes, then you have lysosomes in your book, then mitochondria, and if I have missed some plastids, chloroplast, okay. And then comes vacuole. So we will be discussing, and then I will try to give you a descriptive or a comparative account between plant cell and animal cell. And the next thing which I will try to provide you is this: which organelles lack membrane around them, then which organelles are bound by a single membrane, and which organelles have a double membranous coating around them. So this would finish our chapter. This is all you want to, you should know about the fundamental unit of life. Okay, we have not finished our chapter yet. I'll be finishing in the upcoming 3 to 4 classes. Or I think 2 to 3 classes would be enough for this. So I think the concepts which we discussed in this class will be clear in your minds. If you have any sort of doubt, you can ask, okay. So thank you for joining the class today, and I hope you'll stay tuned to my classes in further lectures too. Thank you for joining.